Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a quick news update video. We've got 7 signings to talk about here today, 2 buyouts, and a trade that happened earlier today. Lots of intriguing moves, and we'll get to all of it coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for Tuesday's live stream at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time, talking about the draft, free agency, and all things in between. But in today's video, we've got another news update video. We got 7 signings here to talk about. There were a couple more, but that's all I'm going to talk about in this video. There were 7 signings here. Also 2 buyouts and a trade that happened earlier today. So touching on all these updates from our past couple of days here. So first, on the signing side, one signing that I missed a couple of days ago was Zach Sawchenko. Sawchenko was a pending UFA goaltender. He's 27 years old. He played this past year over in the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. He gets a 1-year contract extension with an AAV of $775,000. It's a pretty dang good pickup there for Sawchenko and the Jackets. Sawchenko only has 7 games of NHL experience back in 21-22, so he's mostly an AHL level guy, so just going to provide some depth for the Blue Jackets going forward. So at least they do get a 3rd, 4th stringer who can play the AHL level, so interesting note there. But the Jackets have signed Sawchenko to a 1-year $775,000 extension. Then we saw the Anaheim Ducks sign a goaltender as well, as they signed Ville Husso to a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $2.2 million. He was acquired at the trade deadline, played majority of the season of the AHL for the Ducks. They get into 4 games at the NHL level, putting up a .925 save percentage and 2.99 GAA after having an .866 save percentage and 3.69 GAA in 9 games with Detroit. So the Red Wings, they needed to switch up some of their goaltending. They had too many goaltenders, so they moved Husso for future considerations at the deadline. Now it's a little bit surprising to see him sign because they just picked up Peter Mrazek, and now it's going to be like $6 million to 2 goaltenders who would be the best backups to Dostal. So I do really wonder why they would sign Ville Husso. It's a little bit of a confusing move, but I do wonder if they maybe consider trying to trade Mrazek now after they signed Husso. And Husso, like I said, since arriving at Anaheim, he had his best save percentage since being in St. Louis all those years back. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But Husso, who had a good stint towards the end of the season with the Ducks after being acquired at the deadline, has signed a 2-year extension, and he will be remaining with the Anaheim Ducks. Then we saw Toronto Maple Leafs sign maybe one of the best contracts they have at least signed in a long time, and that is with Toronto Maple Leafs forward Matthew Knies, the RFA winger, who's 22 years old. A lot of people were thinking he was going to get like a 3 or 4 year deal, shorter term sort of bridge type deal. Winds up signing a 6-year contract extension with an AAV of $7.75 million. This is an absolute steal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's around the same AAV as Peterka signed with Utah. It's a year more. Getting Knies for 6 years at that sort of a cap it is going to be a beautiful steal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had 29 goals, 58 points in 78 games this past year, which were both career highs. He had a very fantastic season. Long term, he's going to be a solid 35 goal scorer, and he's going to put up like 65, 70, maybe even 75 points. So like Knies is a huge piece of this team's top 6 going forward. So seeing him get signed, avoid any sort of offer sheet possibilities. There's great stuff there from Toronto, and Knies is able to get a 6-year extension. So really good stuff there from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Then we saw the Boston Bruins sign a couple of guys. First, they signed trade deadline acquisition Marek Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov was an RFA, lower end prospect, starting to get acclimated into the NHL level. He's a center/left winger, 22 years old, signed a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $925,000. Not too bad. Kuznetsov wound up having 5 goals and 12 points in 75 games this past year with Minnesota and Boston combined, which was his highest point total in his first career NHL season. So Kuznetsov looks like a really solid player, solid middle 6 forward of the future for the Boston Bruins. And like I said, the trade deadline, it was a steal of a deal for the Boston Bruins to get him. So a very interesting signing here, and I think it's a great deal for the Bruins as they get Kuznetsov for another 2 seasons. Then one of the guys who's on my End-to-End Hockey trade bay list as an RFA has signed as Morgan Geekie, who's a center/right winger, 26 years old, had a breakout season this past year in the Boston Bruins organization, and I think his 2nd season in Boston. gets a 6-year contract extension with the AAV of $5.5 million. That's a very expensive contract, Geekie. He's a good player, but I think 5.5 is way too much. He had a 33-goal, 57-point season in 77 games this past year, which blew his career high out of the water, which was the year prior when he had 39 points and 17 goals. So maybe if he can continue to grow and turn to like a consistent 30-goal scorer, consistent 50 to 60-point player, that sort of a deal actually works out quite well. But if he regresses a little bit, this year is sort of just an anomaly, and he starts to turn back into like a 20-goal scorer and a 40 to 45-point player, that deal doesn't look overly good for the Boston Bruins. So for the time being, I think it's all right, and Geekie's young enough. I don't think the term is too much. I just wonder if the AAV is a little bit too high, and if this year was sort of an anomaly for Geekie. So very interesting note there, but Geekie has signed a 6-year extension. Then we saw one of the bigger UFA defensemen get locked up on a new deal, as Dante Fabbro, the 27-year-old right-shot defenseman who was heading for unrestricted free agency after being claimed off of waivers by Columbus mid-season, has signed a 4-year contract extension with the AAV of $4.13 million. Solid deal there for Fabbro, who had 9 goals and 26 points in 68 games this past year with Nashville and Columbus combined, which was a career high for him in both the goal category and the point category. So I think long-term Fabbro's going to be a solid second pair right-shot defenseman for the Blue Jackets, at least for the next couple of seasons. And with him only being 27 years old, I think that deal's going to sort of age quite well. Is Fabbro a $4 million defenseman? Probably not, but I don't think it's too much of a drastic overpayment, and he probably could have gotten 5 on the open market. So very interesting note there, but the Jackets have signed Fabbro to an extension. And then we also saw a massive extension happen over in Ottawa. 37-year-old center/winger Claude Giroux has signed a 1-year extension. There was a lot of talk about would Giroux go to free agency, would he sign, but he winds up signing a $2 million 1-year contract extension with the Ottawa Senators, and he has signing bonuses that could get him very close to $5 million at the end of the season, which I think were for playoff wins, like the series wins, and games played like 20, 30, 40, things like that. So he does have the opportunity to get upwards of $4.5 million in bonuses, but his base salary is $2 million. So it could work out really well for Ottawa, depending on how far they go in the postseason. Giroux this past year had 15 goals and 50 points in 81 games, which was his lowest point total since the shortened season in 2020-2021. So definitely, it wasn't a great season there for Giroux, and he has lowest goal total in forever. So you can definitely see Giroux starting to trail off and get a little bit older and things like that, but he's still a solid like third line guy who can put up 40 to 50 points and still produce well on the goal scoring side. So he's also a very good veteran leader on that team in Ottawa. So a solid move there from the Senators as they are able to keep Claude Giroux in the fold for the Ottawa Senators. So a very good move there from the Senators as they are able to keep Claude Giroux in the system. But those are all the signings we saw from earlier today on Sunday, as lots of very intriguing signings, 7 in total. So next, going over to 2 buyouts. One a buyout, one a contract termination. We're nearing the end of the first buyout window, which is when you're going to see most, if not all, of the buyouts. And we've only had a couple, but there was another buyout earlier today, and it actually involved the Seattle Kraken player who they recently acquired, as Joe Veleno, who they acquired in the Andre Burakovsky deal just about a week ago, has been placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of a buyout. So very interesting out there. His buyout is only a 1/3 buyout because of his age. He's 25 years old. Players who are under 26 years old only get a 1/3 buyout if their contract's bought out. So with this in mind, it's not a bad deal there for the Kraken. He had, I think, a $2.75 million AAV for this upcoming season. That's not only going to be on their books for about $795,000 for this year and $296,000 for next year. So like in the grand scheme of things, Veleno, after Gaudreau was acquired by the Kraken, was never going to play a whole bunch of the NHL levels. So they buy him out. They save about $2 million in cap space for this year. They're going to have a $200,000 penalty next year. So honestly, it's not a bad buyout there for the Kraken. It saves him a little bit more cap space. Veleno's not going to be UFA. He can go sign wherever he wants, and hopefully he gets a fresh start. So an interesting buyout there. But we also saw a contract termination as the Tampa Bay Lightning and Connor Sheary have mutually agreed to terminate terminate his contract. So Sheary signed a 2-year contract last offseason with a $2 million AAV, but played most of last year at the AHL level. So he needs to have some sort of a fresh start. He was willing to give up the money that he's already on in his contract to get maybe a fresh start and more playing time elsewhere. So Sheary winds up agreeing with the Bolts to terminate his contract, and now he's going to be looking for another opportunity elsewhere after he clears unconditional waivers. So very interesting note there, but the Bolts and Sheary have mutually agreed to terminate his contract, and he's now going to go and see if he can sign something else in free agency. Well, recently acquired Seattle Kraken Joe Veleno has been bought out by the Kraken, so very interesting note there. And lastly, we saw one very interesting deal between the Vegas Golden Knights and Nashville Predators just before we recorded this video, and it's a huge one. The trade is as follows. The Vegas Golden Knights acquired Sissons and Jermey Lauzon from the Nashville Predators in exchange for Nick Hague. For the Predators, we'll look at this from their side first. It's a smart move there from the Predators. Now, after the signing, Hague was an RFA. He was number, I think, 7 on my updated end-to-end hockey 40-player trade bait list. So he was up high on my trade bait list. I thought it was a very likely chance he was going to be traded. He was an RFA. He signed a 4-year contract extension with a $5.5 million after this deal to the Nashville Predators. So for the Preds side, it makes a whole bunch of sense. Sissons is a solid bomb 6'4", but he was in the final year of his deal. Lauzon's a solid third pair of defenseman, but he's in the final year of his deal. So they move off a couple of guys who are pending UFAs. They're able to get Nick Hague. That contract might be a little bit expensive. I would have thought somewhere around the $3-4, maybe $4.5 million AAV mark. I think 5.5. Definitely an overpayment for Nashville, but I do think in a more expanded role, Hague can be a second pair defenseman. He was one of the best Vegas Golden Knights draft selections ever, and he did quite well with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's 26 years old. He had 5 goals and 12 points in 68 games last year for Vegas, which was not one of his career highs, but he was injured a little bit last year. So I definitely think Hague was never going to be brought back by Vegas. His ask was just way too high. Nashville's offering him what he wanted, so he winds up signing there, and I think he can be a really solid guy. It's only a 4-year contract. It's only going to take him until he's 30. So even though I do think it's a little bit of an overpayment, it's not a bad deal for the Predators, and they get rid of a couple of pending UFAs. When it comes to the Vegas side, they get 2 guys here. Lauzon can help replace Hague, as well as potentially the injured Pietrangelo, for replacing some depth on the blue line. He's 28 years old. He's a left shot defenseman. He's only making $2 million, so he's $3.5 million cheaper than Hague is. He can also play on the right side. He had an assist in 28 games this past year for Nashville. He's a really solid, hard-hitting forward. He lays a whole bunch of hits. He plays rough and tumble style of games, so I think he's going to gel well with the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't think he's going to be a huge impact player. He's not going to put you up a whole bunch of points, but I think he could be a solid third-pair guy. And if it doesn't work out, they can walk away from him as a UFA next offseason. So it's a solid pickup there from the Knights. They also get Sissons. Sissons is entering the final year of a 7-year extension with an AAV of $2.9 million. He's a center/right winger, 31 years old. He sort of seems to me like the Waugh replacement. There's a lot of speculation out there that Vegas is going to go after Mitch Marner. Nick Waugh is a very likely candidate to get dealt, and with Sissons making under $3 million and Waugh making $3 million, that at least saves them about $150,000 in cap space, which every little bit at this point counts. Sissons had 7 goals and 21 points in 72 games last year for Nashville, which was his lowest point total since the shortened season 2020-2021. So very interesting note there. Like Sissons, he's starting to go down in production. He's 31 years old. Like the contract might be a little bit too much for the Vegas Golden Knights, but I think if he was to replace Waugh, play on the third line, be a productive sort of guy, I think that could be a solid move there for the Vegas Golden Knights. So I do think Nashville wins this deal because they get the younger player, and even though it's a little bit of an overpayment on the extension, I don't think it's too bad, but still it's a very interesting trade here. The Vegas Golden Knights move Hague to Nashville and acquire Sissons and Lauzon. So definitely that's all I'm going to talk about in this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who do you think won the Nashville-Vegas trade? What do you think of the 2 buyouts? And what do you think of the 7 signings? Definitely your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That is all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you like, remember to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for Tuesday's live stream at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time, talking about free agency. Don't forget to check out my blog, talking about news, rumors, and analysis, stuff like that. So definitely don't forget to check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.